Hi, I'm Benjamin Frost, and with me is Brandon Barnes.
Hi there.
And we're gonna go over some of the basic designs for the Diur or the Diur folk today. I wanting to do this for a while, and so has Brandon. Um, we just haven't had a chance in a while yet. Sorry, there hasn't been many posts, but yeah. Brandon, is there anything you'd like to say at the start, or you want to just get right into it?
Just that I'm a concept artist, illustrator, and got some experience with 3D as well.
Yeah, I was
It's a
very,
bit
very
about
lucky
me.
to meet you. Like the perfect skill set for everything I needed, all in one. Like, talk about a slam dunk. So, when I was first, I mean, I've been working on this game for a long time, but when I was first trying to get a visual idea, because I don't have the ability to really draw that well, I went to one of my friends, Mez Hernandez, who had they had they had worked with me on some stuff before. They're very busy with their own projects. I will link them with Brandon's work. But they had done some work, and as a favor to me, they had done these very, very basic sketches of some of the concepts, and then way back in the gap now, when I put together some basic lore, and then really sent off the idea, and then Brandon came up with this really, and his remix of it, and it's kind of become iconic now. Um, and Brandon, along with Cal Pymel, the the one of the other very go-to artists I have, is also very, very good. Um, and what we could talk about, like the evolution of their process and how they've come together over time and everything. And I'm talking a little too much, obviously, but I really would like Brandon to explain his process and how he came together. So this was the initial sketch that I had graciously gotten from Mez. Mez had gotten this to me based off of like my kind of sputtering ideas, and then Brandon, what did you think when you first saw these and everything? And I kind of
Yeah,
gave you the lore pitch.
yeah. Mez did a really good job. This is a really good stepping off point for me as well, just to get you just to get in the headspace really of all these elements. It's just good to see something visual straight away. And yeah, so you sent me the brief, the lore. I went through all of that. We like nailed down. Okay, we want these big burly warriors. They're a bit cumbersome. They're very heavy, and that informs, say, like the shape language and the silhouette. So, looking at this already, I can see how they've nailed down these elements. And then we get into the more details, like, okay, we want them to look like squids, like cuttlefish, the cephalopod species for the head. And I'd say my process is okay, give me the brief. Let's see all the specifics, the race, the shape, and then I go and say I do like a generic Pinterest. I look at all the influences, the references we need. I looked at the squids. I looked at the coral, which is really important for the natural body armor they have.
Yeah, because
And
the
yeah,
a big thing with them was part of the concept that I had I was very, very, once again, very, very pleased with what Mez did, because that's such a hard idea to get across without visually, like, even maybe that speaks to my lack of skill as a writer, but it's a very hard concept to get across without just having something to pinpoint to, because the whole thing with them is they don't just look like this underneath the armor. These are very much a character design like iteration. The idea for the Diur specifically was that, like, their head and maybe parts of their shoulders, their hands and their feet are the only parts of their body that are like soft tissues that are exposed, and everything else when you crack underneath the armor and the chainmail and everything else, is a coral exoskeleton. It's like a living rock exoskeleton that's part of them, and they kind of have bones, but not really. They can bend in very odd ways. They're very, like Brandon said, they're very burly and they're very big looking, even though they're shorter than humans. Generally, they're not that tall, but they're compact and powerful, and very much like, it starts as visually it's a reimagining of a dwarf, but then as you go on, it's like, no, this is a rock monster. This is a deep sea, deep underground creature that is not, they're not adapted to be living in an area with a lot of open space, and in an area where you're not going to be viable. It's not possible for you to get attacked at all times everywhere.
Yeah, I'd say from like afar, it's got the traditional dwarf elements. They're quite short, stocky. They have this like beard element, and we wanted to make it recognizable, but also cement this species and make it realistic and make it its own iconic design.
Yeah, and it's very much the kind of thing. It's like, as you get closer, the closer you get, the more you're like, this is not something we're actually used to. We're not in Kansas anymore, kind of feeling.
Yeah, it's quite alien, but it makes it exciting when you were explaining like the extra digits in the hands and how they can rotate in different directions. They're quite, imagine like say tentacles where they can move in different directions, and the coral armor is essentially like dictates how they can rotate.
Yeah,
and their mobility.
They have the idea we had, and I had very well. I say we because I had a very basic idea, and then the more I would pitch stuff to Brandon, and Brandon would work and work and work, and he would come back with more his own iterations on it, and it was much more of a collaborative process than just, I'm gonna direct and you just you just do the thing. And so this is his take on the idea of the Diur Ranger, which it's much more armored. This is for the concept, so it's not, we don't really see an anatomy of it, but they're very much, as you see, you have these other ones, and then other than the Pioneer, they're all in their heavy boots, and they have the heavy shoulder pads and everything else. And then the Ranger is just, he's barefoot, and you can kind of see his knees, and he's got just the helmet. And the idea for them is that, like, they're not just nimble because they're more trained or anything. They're nimble because they shave down the exoskeleton. They don't let it build up so much that they are limited by it. And they're much less protected than their brethren, obviously, but it also means that they can move through creeps and crags and everything else. And the Underworld's, it's a fantasy setting, but the Underworld's also supposed to be relatively realistic in the sense that, if you've ever been in a real cave system or you want to visit a cave system and everything, it is not a good idea to be a big burly man with a big backpack and a lot of stuff. There's a lot of tight corridors. There's a lot of places you're not actually supposed to fit.
Yeah, with the design, I wanted to strip back the heavy armor, just make it believable that this is a ranger. They're going out, they're exploring, and they're like the first person there. And to stick them in big heavy plate is just not practical. I want to give them the crossbow just to the nod of the visuals of like a ranger. They want to be quick and nimble with a weapon like that if they do get into trouble. Give them the shovel on the back just so they are in the nitty gritty creating the paths. And that's like the main approach for each unit is what do they do and what are they good at, and let's give them those tools and elements and just focus on that. So you can look at this unit and go, okay, I can look at it and I can guess what kind of role he has.
Yeah.
But also make them cohesive as a whole faction. It's like you kind of got to balance those things.
Yeah,
and it's really fun to design that.
And if we ever get to, I'm hoping we can in the future cover some more of the designs that Brandon's done. you can see how like he's still got his distinctive art style, but then you look at the other lineups of the different factions that he's done, and you can see how like wildly different they look. So, like he uses the same color palette, and it's the same style, same stroke work, but at the same time, it's like the Ferocians do not look like the Diur, and the Diur do not look like the Myokeons, and the Myokeons do not look like the Dark Seekers. They're still all very, very distinctive. Um, I have to say it's like my favorite thing about your work, honestly, is that when you do these concept lineups where you don't try to do too much detail, you just enough to explain, but you always focus on the faces. And so like if you try to look in the eyes of any of the characters or look at like go do the animal feeling that humans have of just like but what is this creature's face, where is the face and everything, that you can see how detailed that is compared to everything else, and it's immediately it just feels like it's just right. I'm complimenting you, but it's I wanted to say it like it feels to me just right, and I think that's important.
Yeah,
I think it's a really important part of your work.
yeah, definitely. You want to put you're naturally drawn to, okay, let's look at the head. This is the focal point, and it needed that detail there just so you can understand like the role of this character. He needs to look, say, stoic for the leader, or aged because he's an older Diur, so his tentacles would be longer. Whereas like that needed more attention than, let's say, the chainmail kind of areas where I just need to indicate that. That's not as important as that for the design.
Yeah, and
It's just
it
it's
just
just
gets it. You
focusing.
have it right with the fist clenching and everything else, and it's like as much crap as I give GW, the tactical rock kind of fits. I mean, they are underground.
Yeah,
There's going to be
it's
rocks
like I
everywhere.
need to. As much it is like it's a silly trope, but he needs to be larger than the other characters, more raised up. You're like, okay, this guy is the leader character. There's like little hints to inform the player. Okay, this guy is the leader unit.
Yeah, he's got the hero pose. We better leave.
Yeah, he's got the bigger helmet, more fancy armor. It's these things add up, and it helps the design.
Yeah, and it's I do want to say about that. It's like it's not to take away, not just because we're both of us have been very influenced by the visual style of Warhammer and stuff, but there's a point to why the Diur specifically have the big shoulder pads, the big pauldrons, the big
Hmm.
helmet and the pauldrons, because a lot of their design is about how like I said, their soft tissues are mostly focused on their head, their hands, and their feet. So those are going to be the parts that they armor the most, but also as to how alien they are as a species compared to humans, even if they have like kind of a similar body plan, they are not like us at all. Is that their brain is almost decentralized between their head and their shoulders, so they need to armor their shoulders and neck area a lot so that a lucky hit or something doesn't cause them to start losing senses. And if I ever get to do any RPG rules or anything, that's definitely would be a big factor with them, is that they have, because of their beards, because of their how their eyes work, how sensitive the beard tentacles are, and everything else. They have a vast array of senses that humans don't, that are there to let them survive in their natural environment, which is the underworld. And uh, that, but at the same time, it's like one lucky hit to a shoulder, to something as quote unquote simple as a shoulder, can like suddenly leave them blind or deaf, or a unit that I want to do at some point. I think I've talked with Brandon about, but it wasn't really an important unit for the Diur's kind of like visual style, was the Shriven, which are like they're shamed. They're basically their outcast criminal equivalents, and their whole thing is they very much they're the ones that get their beard tentacles shaven off, and then they get sent out in the wild, and it's like you can come back when it regrows, because they can regenerate from most of these things like a cuttlefish, like an octopus, but it's very, very slowly. And like imagine if you were left out imagine if you got like thrown out into a jungle from your town or your village or where you're living because you did something terrible, and like it was your punishment for your crime, and they said, well, we're going to cut your hands off and send you out into the jungle. Your hands will regrow, but is that really that much of a comfort when you have to live in the jungle for a few months while your hands are regrowing or something? It'd be kind of terrible. Like,
I think on that point of them regenerating slowly, is this the reason why they're so heavily armored? Is because of that they want to protect their vital areas. If they do get nicked, it's going to take them even longer than the other races. So they need to use their technology and smithing to for their advantage.
yeah,
And I want to bring all these story elements and lore into the design, so you can look at it and you can read into it, and it makes you want to know what's behind the design.
yeah.
It's really fun to do that.
That was why it was important to me that the pioneers and the rangers kind of stay barefoot, because it's the heavy boots are a big deal, but also they're very loud. And it's like when you have heavy boots like that, it's very loud in the underworld, and it's like, maybe to invaders like humans that are used to the surface and everything, it's not going to be as bad, but like to them, it's like trudging around like a warrior or a flame bearer trudging around marching formation or something through a tunnel is going to be very, very, very obvious to other deer that might ambush them or other like native creatures. And on top of that, because they're so dexterous, because they have such uh, like Brandon was saying, how they can rotate different parts of their body in different ways, and that's why they're slow, but they're not unskilled in combat. They're not slow like in terms of something like initiative. They're just slow like in terms of how fast they can move in a given turn or something like that. They when they're the less armored they are, when they have more of their flesh, quote unquote, exposed, they can sense more of the environment. They can feel. There's even rangers that I wanted to plan to have them have upgrades or abilities where they get to walk on walls and ceilings, because they're so strong, and they're running around barefoot and barehanded, able to like creep around in ways that obviously a warrior can't. But at the same time, they lose a toe, even though they have a lot of them. They might lose a toe or something. It's going to be months of them regenerating that and losing that ability and dealing with that, while the warriors just hey man, everyone heard me coming, but they couldn't get through the armor anyway. But yeah, but the very basic designs that we had, as I said, we started. I very much started right when I met, like right before I met Brandon. I started with what Mez had given me, and then sent it off to him when we were starting to work together. And at the same time, I had some similar concepts that someone I knew had offered me, an artist named Andrea Termi, who I hope she's doing well, because she went on to work for Ubisoft, and that's not that's not going that well right now.
Oh yeah, that's true.
But she was also incredibly talented, and she felt inspired by what I was talking about when I was spitballing concepts to her, and we were just kind of shooting the shit. And she sent these, and this was her interpretation of like a female deer and then like the male deer, and she very much leaned very, very hard into the more aquatic elements of it. I thought, and I sent these off to Brandon and said, it's like, this is not exactly what I was looking for, but they're so cool looking. I think they're just, but especially with the skirts and the idea like the female deer have less tentacles on the face, and more of them pushed back behind, not like as hair, but more like so they can see predators, but they can sense predators behind them more commonly and everything. But I got through that, and then at the same time, I sent a lot of concepts to Cal, and for a different kind of Diur, which at some point I hope to do a different video on these guys. But he did a lot of there was a lot of cross pollination that I sent to everybody as he did, because this was some of his concepts, and he got a lot of the similar ideas of the coral, and then how to work the digits of the extra digits of the hand, and the thumbs on both sides and everything. But the star of the show, honestly, was the lineup that Brandon did. For that, I was very, very impressed and pleased with this when I first got it. And you went through the trouble of even doing the non-helmeted versions and everything. It was super cool. So, did you want to talk about the lineup that you did and how these kind of came together for you?
Yeah, sure. Should we start with this one? So, I started with the warrior character, and I knew that the other units would have the same kind of clothing and elements there. So I wanted to nail the warrior first and create this visual library for all of the other units, so how the gauntlets would look, or the boots, standardize those elements.
Yeah.
But also I didn't want to go too over the top with the armor, because let's say your baseline is they're in full plate, everything's all bulky.
Yeah, and
then how do you make the bell bearer more extravagant?
Yeah, if
you
the
need
bell
to
bearers, if that ended up being the basic warrior, it's well, where do we go from here?
Yeah,
or the basic
there's
warrior
no
looks like the
ceiling.
flame bearer.
Of course, yeah. So I knew I had to make them armored, but not over the top. I wanted to, standardize the weapons. I wanted to establish, say, the tentacles, the tentacle beard, and how the helmet would protect that.
Yeah, and I think it comes together really well, because they have this whole, especially with what you did with color values, even if it's in a black and white sketches. You did your signature very much still have the hyper detailed head and face, compared to the not so detailed other parts that didn't need that level of detail. But you have the greaves and the lobster gauntlets and the shoulder pads, very, very distinctive from the rest. And then because of the color grading here you have with the belt and the girdle, it's this is more obviously kind of a tabard or skin, or just the various medieval leftover accoutrements of clothing that they always have, and with medieval clothing and medieval apparel, where it's you're going to have excess material almost, and just because of how crude the methods are compared to modern day of making anything. So you're going to have tabards, you're going to have tails, you're going to have this, that, and the other thing that may not always be a super functional thing. But I like that you went out of your way to make sure it's this is the chainmail. You have the dark chainmail, and then the tabard. It's this could be the orc hide. This could be the Durlock hide tabard that he has there. That's just part of the girdle. It's you need something to wipe his hands on, or something that's just there as part of the tunic that might be underneath the chainmail. And it just comes together really well to me, and I really love how. I still very much love how you just got the idea so well that these guys are so big, they're so bulky, they're so armored themselves with the exoskeleton. It's this might just be a basic chainmail hauberk in a setting that people have plate mail, but you have about the same amount of protection. This does not feel this does not feel like a light infantry target,
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and for I guess the art aspect is making the chainmail a darker value to the armor, the gauntlets, and the belt. It's showing you these are different elements, and you can separate them. Okay, this would be metal, like you said. This could be some sort of leather. It's indicating the different materials. To then, say we take this and then we make it into a miniature. We can put those extra details in for the 3D artist.
Yeah, and we do have the miniature actually. Do you want to? We could look at that now. We can kind of save that to last because it almost feels like it's too powerful. It's too good.
Yeah, sure.
But because I thought the miniatures came together very, very well. Like these are some of the very basics of them, but like not how they wholly came together yet. And these are the ones that I have offered on like the Patreon tiers. It's like the very first miniatures ever made for this game. You can get the STL and everything, but like the God, this must have we didn't get to talk much about this, but this must have been a pain to do.
Oh yeah.
In Blender or whatever you use, because I remember when I was getting them printed, I was working with a friend of mine that like runs kind of a printer farm, and he was telling me it's like this model is really well done, but he was saying but, and I was like, well, there's a but coming, isn't there? And he's like, yeah, but what happened with the chainmail, man? It didn't need to be like this. And then I thought back, I'm like, man, Brandon, you had to fight with this chainmail, didn't you?
Yeah, that's the issue, isn't it? It's how do you make something so intricate and detailed in real life? How do you display that in 3D that will print nicely? And it was tough because like you could sculpt every single ringlet, but at like say a 30mm base model, you're not going to see that. Like, how do you indicate that? And
so you need to kind of texture it, but then at the same time, you're like,
yeah, you can have like thousands of holes because it just won't print nicely. So I had to find a nice middle ground, like give it a nice texture so it reads as chainmail, but also make it printable. And it was a lot of back and forth trying to like get rid of the holes. And I think I achieved what I wanted to, so it looks like mail.
Yeah, I wish I had like all the pictures on hand, but they're spread across Facebook of the painted one that I had printed out and a friend did. But like they did come out very, very detailed, very well, and I was very happy with it. Obviously, and the thing I know it's like they don't exactly have the sleeves, but it kind of worked out better because you have the very obvious like coral plates and everything. And then this is the unhelmeted version, but also like you did these little details with the axe, and then you did like you had like the carved patterns into the big cheeks of the axe itself, and then the haft of the axe actually looks like, yeah, it's like, you know, they have to use corded dried mushroom fibers and vine fibers and stuff like that because, you know, you're not going to have trees grow in the underworld, at least not in like a lot of spots. You know, it's a fantasy setting. There's magical things down there like dinosaurs. But you have this, and it's very obviously like it's everything like looks so intricate, and but I love it. I just love it how well it came together, and they have this very much like, you know, almost kind of like, you know, this is a men at arms of antiquity feel with the crossed belts, and then the very basic chainmail hauberk, but then they still have the heavy pauldrons and the greaves and everything. And then you have the intricate design on the shield. I just really like how it came out, honestly, especially since like this is like one of the first miniatures you made.
Yeah, I'm really proud of how this one came out, and adding the intricate details on the shield and the axe, just because these would be like standardized weapons in this race and army, and they would make tons of them, and they would figure out how to make them, like mass produce them, and they're just hinting at, say, like maybe the blacksmith has this signature, or maybe that's the insignia of that specific army. It's just giving it a bit more than just, okay, basic.
Yeah,
axe and shield,
but at the
just giving it
same
a
time,
bit more life.
yeah, but at the same time, I really like that it's not so detailed. It's not. It's very much like older kind of older kind of Reaper miniatures or older kind of Games Workshop Citadel miniatures, where you have enough personality to show it's like this is a distinctive model, but at the same time, it's not so much that like an individual person coming into the game can't go and customize it themselves, and like if they want to scrub off the shield, they can. Especially in this day and age of like well, they if they buy the STL, they'll just edit it in Blender first instead of having to like just convert it. But like the detail is enough to give them their own personality and make you understand it's like this is its own kind of thing, but not so much that it's like, but there is no room for yourself in it. There's I love the fact that you left everything like simple yet elegant enough that people can go your dudes with it. They can very much go, it's like, maybe I don't want this on my axe cheek or something, or they can shave down the axe if they don't want it to look that big, or take off this kind of crowbill attachment that you have. That honestly, I really think this is a cool attachment. We don't ever really talked about it, but I always just assumed that you had it there as kind of like a climbing spike, like just in case they need to get up over like some ravine or anything, because it's underground. There's going to be a lot of climbing and digging and such. I figured it was there, or at least like it's a counterbalance, because the axe itself is like huge by human standards.
Yeah. I wanted to make it make sense, like a counterbalance, and then make it also practical.
Yeah, and then like
could be like a blunt force. Could be like a blunt force weapon or something like that.
In the initial sketch, it almost looked like you had like it was kind of like this was like a war pick with a blunt head, where it's just like you can just hit him with the hammer, but it just how this looked here, it looked like you could have the underside sharpened. It's almost like a climbing rake or something like that, like an ice axe. We never talked about what it was. I just dig it. I'm just saying. but then we had I really like how the helmet came together too, with the chainmail, like the I can't remember the term for it. It's not Aventail. It's not exactly a coif, but the almost like the chainmail mouth guard. It kind of has to protect the beard tentacles. But then you had the ranger with and without the helmet and everything. And like you said, you gave him the shovel. You gave him the crossbow, and the crossbow it felt like the most practical choice, honestly, because you can take a gun, but that's very loud. They can take like they have at least the Diur have very, very rudimentary firearms, but like if you ever fired a gun without ear protection, you're already like, all right. Now imagine having way more sensitive hearing and pressure sense and everything, and then firing a gun in an enclosed space with no ear protection. Like, but at the same time, it's like they could take a throwing weapon, or they could take a bow or something, but it doesn't and then those are options I want to have in the game, but at the same time, it feels like the crossbow is just the right kind of thing of like you can turn it sideways to fit it in awkward angles. It stays loaded. It's not something you have to draw back and fire when you get into danger or anything.
Yeah, I think it's very mobile. You'd be able to easily point and shoot it compared to say like a bow, or even if they have the like maneuverability with a bow, like say they had to like pull it all the way back, they might not. They might be in a crowded area. It made sense to give the range of the crossbow.
Yeah, it's like you could shoot that bow. You have no guarantee that bow is going to penetrate anything, when like you can't draw it back that far because you're big exoskeleton bulky squid man and you're stuck in a cave surrounded by monsters. It's very much something I want to explore with the game, with how the cramping system works, with like if you have models that are overlapping each other's bases and everything, they're getting penalties to fight each other and stuff, because they're literally between a rock and a hard place and everything. So having smaller, more compact weapons like that, they're like you don't really think compact when you look at a crossbow, but like in the context, this is a very practical choice, I think. And I like how you did it. You gave it you gave it the you gave it like the same kind of foot strap, but it doesn't really need the reel on it. It's more kind of there as like to protect it itself, and you have kind of the bayonet going on with it, where
That's the idea. But
yeah, and then you have the wings on it itself, or they could be metal. They could be a flexible metal. They could also be some kind of like gnarled mushroom fiber that it's using instead of, once again, they don't really have wood. They're carving everything out of like bone and dried mushroom fibers, and if they have wood, it's going to be from like deep root systems and everything, and those aren't very common.
yeah, I wanted to design the crossbow without using the resources they have available. So that's why I gave the actual bow. You could interpret it as like the coral or some sort of metal.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like your bog standard. Okay, what is a crossbow? Okay, you'd have this like really nicely cut bow.
And we're just gonna go to the nearby yew tree, and then we're gonna just gonna go to a bower shop, and it's like the more you look in, and it's not, that wasn't a simple process either. I mean, like that's the history of warfare though. So the weapons become marginally easier to produce and marginally easier to train with. They overtake other ones, even if they're not really a superior weapon system. British longbowmen were amazing at what they did, but it took like 3 generations to train them and everything. It was a lot easier to just build a really expensive crossbow and teach one guy how to use it once. But at the same time, it's like, we think of crossbows today as something kind of very simple and like, oh, it's not a gun, it can't be that good. It's like, look, man, like when you had hand tools, you know how ridiculous the precise machining was to do that. Now imagine doing that underground with bones and with bones and like root fibers and everything and whatnot. Like, yeah, but that's just their identity for you, and I like how much of that comes together just in the basic character concepts. Like then you have the pioneer, and my favorite thing about what you did with the pioneer is the big hat. Like I like that he's got like the hat in front that's like, it's got the wings to keep dripping condensation and everything out, but then it also like, it doesn't just like, oh, it's just a skull cap, and it like, no, it extends over like the neck / like, lack of a better term, like octopus style brain sack they have going on.
Yeah, I had to make it fit the anatomy, and yeah, it's obviously not made of metal. It'd be made of the natural like leathers and things like that.
Yeah, which in the case of them, it's orc hide. Like they the Durlocks and the Golocks and everything. They keep a lot of degenerated slaves, and then they just skin them for their leather needs and everything. It's screwed up, but it's like, what else are you going to get any kind of textile material from when like most of your underground environment is like populated by cuttlefish and shrimp and things,
Yeah, they really have to make most of the resources they have available to them.
Yeah, and this guy's probably like, by pioneer standards, he's probably rich because he's got a lot of rope. He's got a big set of breeches and pouches and everything. Like, that's a lot of textile material that's not very common. And then a big hefty mattock that's like, looks like it's all one solid piece, like it's drop forged all together or assembled and all together. It doesn't have a wooden haft or anything. It's just
Yeah, I wanted to make it clear, like, this guy is not meant to be in combat. You can look at him and think, okay, what else can he do? What is he specialized in?
Yeah, but they are Diurs, like, more than anybody else. He's not meant to be in combat, but he gets into a fist fight with a random human explorer. I don't think the human explorer is going to come out of that being like, wow, that was a trash mob. Like, oh man, that was a...
Yeah, you definitely wouldn't want to be in a fist fight with someone like him.
Yeah. And then almost the centerpiece, if it weren't for the bell bearer, but like the flame bearer, which I think he came together really, really well. and I've been just jawing way too much. So Brandon, just go off on what you liked about what you designed here and everything.
I think my favorite part of this design is the almost fish tail armor on his back, because this guy, he shoots a flamethrower. He doesn't want any of his exposed hands, face to be burnt. So I wanted to give him and especially like the back of the head. I wanted to give him this big, strong armor, and I think it really marries this like aquatic theme of the Diur, and it just looks cool. I think it's pretty badass.
Yeah, I very much like it, especially how it's asymmetrical. Like I love that because it very much like it could, and it's uncolored, so you don't know. It's like it's not very clear. It's like was it metal and crafted that way, or did they just take a giant sea conch and kind of like improvise it into being this neck collar and everything? Because as heavily armored as he is and everything, and like obviously he's this flamethrower is like a big piece of machinery that was specifically tooled for this task. Because he's got all the asbestos covering him and everything, there's like an improvised feel to him too that like like real soldiers are a lot, where real soldiers and real warriors and just anybody in a dangerous environment. It's like go and look at have you ever run into a plumber or an electrician, or you see a lineman out working on a power line or something. It's like no two guys are going to be dressed the same even when they're in their uniform. Everyone's got their own little accoutrements of extra stuff that they carry around. Like one guy will have stuff he has that he keeps in a rolled up shirt sleeve, and guys will have things that they keep in their hat and everything else. And that's what I really loved about this guy, is how like everything feels asymmetrical but purposeful. He's got the big shoulder pad on one side, but the other he's got this like inverted kind of neck guard that you built. And then the biggest thing I think is just the wispy, like all not only the helmet looks awesome, like the big heavy like fully armored, fully protective helmet looks awesome. But I really think my favorite detail you did is all the wispy bits of asbestos everywhere, because these creatures are almost they're basically silicon based life forms. They don't have the same problems with toxicity and toxic materials in an Earth-like environment that humans would. So they can just hang out with asbestos and stuff. And it's like when you have asbestos available when you're underground, and you have all this heat-proof material, this heat-resistant, fire-proof material, it just feels like it's definitely something you would want to do if you have this weird, strange mechanical device that is spewing naphtha everywhere and stuff. And you're kind of a very wet, almost aquatic creature that's trying not to get burned. I would think that, like, even if you did know how bad asbestos could be to you, but like even if you did, you would do something about it. And especially if you're like, you don't get mesothelioma, you're definitely going to be like, yeah, let's just give me the suit, man. Like, give me the old school fireman suit. I do not want to ever like. I will reach my hand right directly into the kiln with this glove on, kind of feeling.
Yeah, and going off the helmet design, I took the basic warrior helmet and then adjusted that, and it's just, I think it adds this uniformity to the race. Like, okay, they found a good way to design the helmet, but how would this change with the flame bearer? And I liked giving it this front mask at like a darker value, just to make them stand out a bit more as well.
Yeah, and it's if when we get this model into an STL form production, I can't wait to see how people paint them and everything. Or you could totally do the blast furnace, like charred front half, and then the back half is like fine on their back and everything, and how they would do the different colors and whatnot. Like it very much feels like one of those things where it's one of those models that you'll look at and you'll be like, exactly what you want it to look like without it. Or at least this is my feeling, but I feel like it's going to be one of those models that like you get it in your hand and you know exactly what you think it's going to look like when it's painted. But then once it actually does get painted, it just takes on a whole new life of its own that it didn't have before, that you didn't even think it needed, you know?
Yeah, there's some cool color schemes and possibilities once you start adding the color element to these designs.
Yeah. And now, last but certainly not least, the bell bearer, like the big Kahuna guy, or at least like for this lineup, the leader, the center leader for this lineup. It's like that kind of. This is the first lineup you ever did for me, Brandon. So this is like what started the rest of the trend of all the other lineups and everything.
Yeah, this gave me the blueprint to then go do the other races and make the leader unit the centerpiece. And yeah, this guy's armor's more elaborate. He's obviously experienced. He's got the coral jaw that's elongated. It's bigger than everyone else, which indicates his age.
It's almost got this kind of this pharaonic feel to it, like the Ramses beard feeling, but it's their core. It's the whole thing with them. And I guess we haven't really talked about this. Is that their bottom jaw is not part of their head. It's not a soft tissue. It's part of the exoskeleton. It's something that's grown over time as their children and everything. So like the older a Diur gets, the more they're prominent. Their lower jaw is going to be beneath the tentacles and everything, and that's what you did here with it. And it's got this. At least this one, like I said, it's got this pharaonic, like the beard of Ramses, kind of pointed, like this one's and it comes together with the feeling of like this battle priest almost. Like he not
it
just
really
with the
balances
pose.
well with the helmet as well. It really balances it out because I wanted this more elaborate top piece. And I guess we could talk about the bell staff weapon.
I really thought it was a cool thing. So the thing with the Diur when I was writing them, and then like a lot of the work I did with them over the years and whatnot in trying to fit them into RPGs or working on their rules and just writing the lore and everything, is that I realized that they have to be kind of a musical race. I mean, when you live underground, sound is more important than sight, and like they have an advantage over a lot of other underworld creatures in that they have functioning eyes. They can use that in times like that's one of their ambush tactics is usually to like overwhelm things with sound. When they started developing gunpowder or chemical weapons and everything, they would overwhelm other creatures with like just temporarily deafening stuff, and then relying on the fact that they could light up the environment with fire or naphtha and then see things, whereas other things underground would like only be able to hear, and then they lost their hearing, and then they could only feel pressure. So they would be at a massive disadvantage. But with the Diur specifically, I've realized like because they're such a sound-based environment, because they're semi-aquatic and everything else, they're going to be very, you know, not just culturally speaking, they would develop music and everything else to be something very core to them, but also as like if they have a magic system or they have any kind of if they're going to have any kind of like very very specific scientific philosophy at the core of like how they do things, it's probably going to be based off of music. And I really like the idea of the bell bearer because I had the idea of the drum bearer and a flute bearer or a harp bearer and everything, but the bell bearer just came together because you can use the bells like such a I mean, percussion instruments in general is something there's a violence in their nature. It's something that you can beat somebody with a drumstick. It's not a good idea. Most drummers are very peaceful people and would never do that, but you can. And I also it's a lot of the at least conceptually because Brandon obviously takes his own inspirations from other things and then remixes them with my ideas. But conceptually, my ideas, I had a lot of like, there's a lot of concepts I've thought of that have to do with ideas that were in Dark Souls 2 that I just think were like not like never really caught on with a lot of people, and I think Velstadt, the character Velstadt, and his like giant bell staff was really really cool, and how he's got the sacred chime and everything, but it's also just this huge honking weapon, and that's kind of like, yeah, they're a Diur character, they're kind of a warrior priest, it's a leader of the race and everything, but also it's like it feels like their weapon, that like the bell maul is almost like more the core to this character than anything else.
It doubles as a like a staff, some sort of like object of leadership. When you think of
The
like an
scepter.
emperor, they'd have a star, yeah, scepter, and it really visually marries with the musical element of a bell and also just a giant mace. And combining all these elements, it just really works. Really works well.
I really like how it came together, and especially like all the little details. Like you have, especially compared to everybody else, you have he's got a cloak or a cape that's like just kind of a, it's not really necessary as a cloak or a cape would be in a similar, medieval style setting for humans where you that's the best you have in turn. It's like it's not. It's primarily there to regulate temperature. It's primarily there to keep you out of the elements, but it's also can be a status symbol. With the Diur, it's like, no, this is just a status symbol. And then you have,
it makes them very regal.
yeah, and then you have like the helmet where it's got the raised crest for the forehead plate instead of being kind of lower down and much more practical like the warriors are. And then of course his he's older, so he's got the jutting the jutting coral jaw, and then the longer tentacles that go down to his girdle and everything. You can tell, and then a big detail I really liked how you did. And I don't know if this was intentional, like you wanted to be part of the helmet, but then it had to be kind of separate. But I do really like how he's got these spines in the back as part of his mantle, as part of his pauldrons. That it's like, yeah, it's almost like a tuning fork kind of thing that he's got going on in the back that like brings a lot of his armor together, really.
He needed something behind him just to make him look taller than he is, but I do like the idea of like maybe it could vibrate or like reflect the audio waves or something, like make it more of a practical thing.
Yeah, I mean a lot of the gameplay concepts I've been playing with for how bell bearers and like their various musician bearers work and everything is that like because it's the whole gameplay setting is in a cave, everything is in the tunnel tile system and everything. You have like the cave tiles and tunnel square system and everything. Sound music, at least for the Diur, is going to be very powerful because like not it might not be as strong as just throwing a fireball at somebody directly or something, but it's going to be something that doesn't require line of sight and has effectively infinite range. Because when you're in a cave system, one sound on one side is just gonna be like echo all the way on the other, unless there's a lot of like unless there's a lot of like contravening sounds going on through it. You can hear things very very clearly in caves, and that's what makes them so creepy in real life. If you ever done a cave crawl, is if you do one without a big tour group or something, it's like how quiet they are, but at the same time it's like water dropping is so loud. And when you're I mean, yeah, I've never done one alone. I don't think many people have because that's a bad idea, buddy system. But when you're a small group in a cave and everything, it's like there's not a lot of things down there in real life that are gonna ever present a danger to you. That's not just part of the environment. There's not like living creatures, but you always feel like there could be. You always feel like there could be troglodytes or something at any given moment or something. And it's that superstitious human hindbrain acting up, but like they're so like you can't when you don't have any more source of lights and everyone just shuts up, the cave itself, it's like you can hear a pin drop and you can't see your hand in front of your face. It's such an isolating, like, complete experience with that, and that's it blends into how I want to design how their sound music and sound weaponry and everything works, where they can even if it's not very very strong or anything, it's reliable, and they can reach out and manipulate parts of the environment that their character models aren't even anywhere near.
It, I think it makes it. This is unique to the setting. This what makes it stand apart as well. I think it's a really good element to add.
Oh, thank you. But yeah, but I just
guess piggybacking on. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I guess piggybacking on the sound audio element, we also used that to design the faction icon as well.
Yes. Let me get that. It's the faction icon. I think that came together very well as well.
Yeah, where I was just brainstorming and you gave me the brief that sound is very important to this culture and it represents them quite well. And I was researching how do I visually visually show sound, and I saw this really cool visual of different audio waves make different patterns on sand. It's like a science experiment.
Yeah, this is the
and one of them you really liked.
Yeah. Let me bring those up.
I'll have to send you the graphic maybe so we can
yeah, I have it somewhere, but I still have a lot of them in our chat room. I'm just gonna grab them. Okay. But this is the completed one that came together in high res, and I really like how a lot of them came together, especially because of like when it's in black and white, it takes on a totally different aspect than when it's in color. But like it has that uniqueness to it that you can change the color palette and then suddenly it looks totally different.
I think it also reads in the black and white. I wanted to make like a hyper detailed version when you're really up and close, but also it can also read really small with the black and white one. Wanted to try and achieve that with the design.
Yeah, and it almost looks like something from Darkest Dungeon in blackest white, in black and white too. Like that always got me about
grimdark feel.
Yeah, here was some of the very very early ones. And
so I remember you mentioning that there's the 8. 8 is a significant number to the Diur.
Yeah, because they have
8 digits.
They have 5 fingers, 2 thumbs, and a palm. So it's a significant number to them, and it's like the 8 and 1 or the 8 and 2. And they have a lot of numerology going on with their. Here it is. This is it. So this was the original idea where you were coming up with not just the core design but the background, because when I was thinking of an icon, I originally had. I guess I'm spoiling the magic of the process, but like a lot of what I do visually, as far as like designing anything, is I will come up with what I want something to look like in a very very basic form, and I'll have like 3 or 4 key details, and I'll go to Brandon and be like, all right, Brandon, these are the things I want. Everything else is up to you. And then we just spitball back and forth as he designs everything, and everything kind of comes together at the end. So far, I think it's worked out pretty well. But it'll be like I wanted, the numerology of the 8 and of the 8 circles to be important, and then kind of this godhead, this godhead icon in the center of this androgynous Diur to represent their kind of their godhead as part of their origin myth religion that goes on with their people and everything. But I left a lot of the other design like very ambiguous, and was like wanted to see what Brandon would come up with, because he always always comes out with this brilliant stuff I'm least expecting. And this is one of the first things that he was saying earlier about how he's like, well, what about the sound pattern of like, when you expose almost like it was like a particular kind of sand when you expose it to a particular number of hertz of ultrasonic frequencies.
Yeah, it's it's trying to how do you visualize sound, and I think this is a perfect representation of that. And I just took that and kind of ran with it.
Yeah, it's like we went with the 320. Yeah, the 320, the 3240 hertz. I'm pretty sure. But these all like it's just there's something so I can't put my finger on it, but it almost reminds me of like old school old school Tool, like listening to old school Tool without any visual aid or anything. Like this is kind of what my brain imagines when you would listen to their music and how it just kind of comes together and everything. That like there's something almost primordial about what they're touching on. It's really kind of cool to imagine like this is what happens naturally with sand exposed to hypersound and everything. And then over time we spitballed all these different concepts of like different kinds of coral, like brain coral and like the brain coral or like different coral blooms for how it could look like if the whole wheel itself was symmetrical but still part of like a natural the coral exoskeleton they have going on. And this one like it was like the right symmetry and everything, but it looked too much like a jellyfish. And then it started taking shape as this, and this was like, all right, we can. This almost was just on its own could have been done, but you wanted to go further, and then we got to this, and like I said, it's just I love how it just wildly different it looks in black and white than it does when it's in color.
Yeah, I'm really happy with this design.
And just it's got all the religious symbolism for their faction and everything, but like the sound symmetry, and then it's the whole thing is just made of coral and everything. Oh, it's just a bunch of donuts. It's like no, it's more than that. Look, but like it's almost like it's a wheel that they would put their fingers in and turn it as it's meant to mean different things. I probably want to include it at some point as like a religious icon instead of just an out of context faction icon. But I really like how it came out.
Yeah, but, we can incorporate it on some of maybe the like bell bearer. Use that iconography somewhere, maybe on his helmet. Or something.
Yeah, on his helmet on the one big flat piece or something, or like a scaled down version of it, or just like the 8 circles.
Yeah.
But that's them, and we've been going on for almost an hour about just the very beginnings of this whole thing. So, was there anything you really wanted to touch on that we didn't get to about it?
I don't think so.
I mean, we have a lot more to come, but like, I don't want to just pull out all the cool things yet.
I think this is it's an example of like what will this look like on a base, and it's just trying to instead of just doing some concept art, let's try and visualize what it might look like as a model and like the scale in relation to the other characters. There's a few things like trying to figure that out at the start. It was a bit of extra like legwork of okay, this should be the scale of this model, and then that helped us for the future factions as well. So I could compare what does a dual pioneer look like compared to
like a human
a different
pioneer.
faction. Yeah.
But the cool thing is like because we're doing modern, like I get you could not have done this kind of thing years and years ago in the old paradigm of before 3D printing and when everything was like cast injection molding and whatnot. Uh, but the cool thing about it, honestly, is that you could have 3D designed it, but it wouldn't have been easy to just print it out. But because you can 3D design it, you can design this and then design another one and then scale them together in the same program and be like, all right, so this is the proper scaling. And of course, there's a lot of the big thing with it is I do want to have a lot of the game have elements of your dudes where if your specific your clan is a bit bigger than everybody else, or they're older, so they've grown more and everything, because they don't really ever stop growing as they age. So the most ancient Diur despots are going to be like huge, like they're actually going to be bigger than humans and everything. But because they're so big, you don't see them commonly because they're going to be having trouble moving around in the tighter tunnels and whatnot. But you can always scale your own. If you get the STLs, you can always scale your own guys to the size as long as they're on the right size base and whatnot. But I can't wait to see as we move forward. I can't wait to see what people do themselves with it when they get their hands on their own models and whatnot. Any of the backers that get the STL and print it out and do their own thing, or if they decide to edit them in some kind of way before even printing them out. I know, the normal line is for a lot of people is to be like, well, don't be messing with the intellectual property and everything. It's like, no, it'd be really cool to see what people come up with. At least I think so.
Oh, I think so too. I've had my fun trying to design and be in this world, and it'd be nice to see what other people can interpret with it.
I'm absolutely sure
there's going to be their own.
Yeah, I'm absolutely sure there's going to be at least one guy out there that really likes the game and really likes the lore or how the game plays or whatever. But he wants to just have classic dwarfs, so he'll make a whole Diur army that are just like Warhammer miniatures or something. I can totally imagine a guy showing up like that. It's like, this is a Diur warrior. How can you tell? Well, he's got a beard and an axe. It's not a squid. Yeah, so it's my guy. You're just kind of like, fine. I guess it's fine. Acceptable proxies. But yeah. Do you have any closing statements you'd like to make about your designs here, other than just hey man, look at my stuff, it's really cool?
I think the main thing is I couldn't have got cool designs without really great source material.
Oh, well, thank you.
It was just great diving into this world and trying to do it justice.
I appreciate
that. It's been a lot of
fun. There's a lot more to come. It's for better or worse. There's a lot more. There's a lot more to come. But yeah, world being what it is, just everything is slow goings. Everyone's got to eat. Everyone's got to take care of their families and everything. So you can't always. Yeah. You can't. Trying to make progress every day is always going to be an uphill battle. But yeah, that's the basics of the Diur design. I hope everyone who watched or listened to this, you really enjoyed it. I've been Benjamin Frost, and with me was Brandon Barnes, the chief art director.
Yeah, thanks for having me on here talking about it.
Appreciate it very much. All right, until next time, guys.